Hello and welcome everybody. Today I shall be talking in this video about the indigeneity, what it is and how it can be constructed. It is an important topic because most of the people living in post-colonial states needs to understand this, and academics, students, scholars also need to understand this. So this is constructing indigeneity. As far as the definition is concerned, let's make a reading of it. The quality or state of being indigenous, which is often associated with the original inhabitants of a particular region or land. Constructing the concept of indigeneity involves considering historical, cultural, and socio-political dimensions. So this goes to show that being indigenous means to be original inhabitants of a particular piece of land. In order to understand that, in order to construct that, we need to understand the historical, cultural, and socio-political dimensions which go to determine all that. So first of all, the historical connection. We need to recognize the historical presence of a group of people in a specific territory. I mean, how these people existed, what type of life they lived, and what is their history, that should be considered first of all. And after that, it must be acknowledged that what type of ties or relationships they had with the land or with their ancestors. I mean, how much they have been occupying the piece of land and what kind of benefit they have been giving to land or they have been getting from that piece of land. If we do so, the historical connection would be established. Similarly, we can also talk about the cultural identity. Cultural identity can be emphasized on two grounds. Number one, that the cultural practices of the people, traditions, languages, beliefs, and systems that distinguish indigenous communities must be talked about, must be discovered. I mean, every community can have different traditions or cultures, or they can have different practices of life. All these things should be discovered, and then systematically it should be attached with a particular group of indigenous people. Not only this, we can also go for acknowledging the significance of cultural heritage in shaping identity. It means it's very important to see that how people possess the cultural heritage and how it has transferred itself to the next generations, and in that way what kind of role it has been playing to identify a particular group of people. And then you see, land and environment are also very much important in case of constructing the identity of a group of people. For example, what should be done in this case? First of all, highlighting the deep connection between indigenous people and their traditional lands. I mean, the piece of land on which these people may be living should be discovered and seen how these people have been living with that, how they were connected to that. Was it simply living on the piece of land, eating from the sources of land, or what kind of cultivation they did on that land. And similarly, we should also talk with respect to the environment of that land, acknowledging the sustainable practices and ecological knowledge developed over generations. That means one should go to discover how the people living on a specific piece of land have been collecting the knowledge of environment and making it safe or trying to use it as good as possible. Have been doing so, these two factors will definitely go to determine this kind of thing. So land and environment are also very significant. Similarly, community and the social organizations are also important in their own regard. We need to understand the communal nature of indigenous societies, often organized around kinship ties and share responsibilities. You know, in the past time, people used to live in tribes, so we can see that in one piece of land, on one piece of land, or in one group of tribe, how many people were organized with respect to their kinship or relationship with each other, and how did they share the responsibilities. And the same thing can be done with respect to the governance structures of those people, of those areas. The indigenous people did have, these communities did have their governance structures, whatever they may be, not definitely like the structures of the Western people, but the indigenous people did have some type of governing structure that should also be discovered. If these things are seen, definitely we can have a good understanding of the identity of the people. It can be constructed as well. Now, not only there is their own history, but also that of the colonial history is important, and the resistance to that history, that is also important. So, number one, how we should do that? Examining the impact of colonialism on indigenous populations, including displacement, forced assimilation, and loss of autonomy. We know it very well that colonizers came into various lands and they uh, forcefully put the people to be placed at one place. They were forced to assimilate at one place, and in that way, autonomy of the people was lost. That should be discovered to see what kind of identity the people possessed. And similarly, we also need to see what was the reaction of the people. I mean, was it resilient? Was it resistant? What kind of reaction came from the indigenous communities against colonial and oppressor forces? So it means that the colonial history of the people and how these people reacted against that, that should also be considered in a very important way. There is something else as well. That means the colonial, is very much important. But we also need to see how much political autonomy the people possess, and after decolonization, up to what extent self-determination, the right of self-determination was exercised. So, advocating for the right of indigenous peoples to self governance and self determination, it means that all of us should struggle, should try to advocate the things which go to determine the right of the people, whatever they are, that they can exist as the people. Only then the indigenous kind of survival is possible. And similarly, we should come to this acknowledging the importance of respecting the autonomy of the indigenous communities in making decisions that affect their well-being. Indigeneity can also be constructed by allowing the people to make their own decisions so that they can, according to their own wills and wishes, with respect to their self-determination, they may be able to make their decision and lead their life as they want that it should be in their well-being, right? So alongside that, the social justice is again very much important, and the rights are also very much important. It means that addressing historical and ongoing injustices faced by the indigenous people, we should try to see how these people are living the life under some injustices. These can be political injustices, these can be social injustices, how the indigenous people are working under it, and we should try to reduce this burden of these people. Only then indigeneity can be constructed. We should also be advocating for the protection of indigenous rights, including land rights, cultural rights, and the right to maintain and develop their own institutions. Indigenous people have their own culture and have their own traditions, so they must be allowed to live their life as they want by taking care of the rights of these people culturally. And we should also see how they can establish their institution and can feel good accordingly. Then there could be another possibility, and that is about the diversity of the people, and that diversity is very much directly linked with the indigeneity also. I mean, there could be the diversity of the people among different indigenous groups as well. For example, if we take just one group, one indigenous group, we will see that culturally, historically, these people have, on the one hand, their unique identity, but on the other hand, their identity is shared with the other people also. Now, this thing could be seen, instead of going back to the stereotyping, we should try to see what type of categories within the indigenousness of the people, what type of other categories which determine the diversity of the people that is present. So once we have done so, we can also take it to the next level, and that level is related to global indigenous solidarity. I mean, we should see how, what type of people which are living at a special piece of land, they are living globally as well, they are present the globe as well. We must try to connect these people together. If the connection establishes, the people of indigenous people worldwide would be able to connect them together, and in that way more benefit will be there in order to have what we call as, the construction of the indigeneity. Some other steps can also be taken. For example, education is one of the steps that we can start with, and the awareness is also there that can be exercised, right? So, in order to do so, we must promote education about the indigenous histories, cultures, and contemporary issues. So, it means that promotion of these type of rights of the people, that they can have their own education, that they can have histories or cultures and contemporary issues, they can talk about themselves. If this is done, surely the things can be better for the construction of indigeneity. And besides that, we must try to foster some of the good things, and which can be definitely termed as the fostering understanding and respect to counter stereotypes and misconception. We must help the people to come up with the understanding of the different culture, differences of cultures, and the misconception should be removed in this regard. If this thing happens, definitely we will be able to create more constructions of the indigeneity of the people. So in the final case, we can say that constructing the concept of indigeneity involves a holistic and inclusive approach that considers the multidimensional aspect of indigenous identity, history, and contemporary struggles. It is essential to engage in open dialogue, listen to the voices of the indigenous people, and work towards creating a more just and inclusive society. So, what is important here? It is the holistic and the inclusive approach, alongside that, multi-dimensional aspects of the indigenous identity, and then it should be associated with the open dialogue of the people and listening to the voices of the people, and after that, working towards creating a more just and inclusive society. If this is done, definitely it's possible to create the kind of indigeneity, construction of indigeneity, which is definitely very much important in our lives, especially the lives of the post-colonial people. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in some next video.